what we will discuss today is the negative dialectics of the individual and society. Because what basically Todd McGovern implies with his theory of the death drive, that is social death drive, not only death drive of individual, not only constitutive to individual, but also constitutes sociality. What he implies kind of is logic of two stages, that there are two stages of how death drive operates. There is first individual, and that is constituted through the death drive, through the repetition of lack or repetition of trauma. And then social death drive comes as a second stage, as something when we start to be social, we start to be kind of re-traumatized. This actualization, what is going on is actualization of the initial death drive, and this is the social death drive. And basically, for McGovern, or at least my interpretation of McGovern, this is what implies this two stages logic. And there are two models. This is how we normally think about that there is individual and then we come together to form a society, or the other way around. There is society first, the real thing, and then we can separate individual out of it, which represents like those two models, those two polar models. They are conventional when we discuss dialectics of subject or the individual. And one of them is seen like was then the individualistic model, represented, for example, by John Locke or Rousseau. They have the idea that there is the subject, egoistic subject first, and then they sacrifice something to form society. And this also resembles Freudian, early Freud logic, Freud without death drive logic, that the pleasure-driven individual, they have to sacrifice something to form society. So there is the subject first, and then they come together, egoistically driven, they come together to form society. They sacrifice something and follow the reality principle, which is just other form of the pleasure principle. And there is different logic, the logic where society comes first. This is the logic, the collectivist logic represented by critical thinkers, so by Marx, when it's not the real thing is the society, the real actual thing, the actual stuff that is there, and any subject would be a secondary formation. It's not the secondary, but more like illusionary formation. It's not, it doesn't actually exist as separate being. It's just more, well, at least it is a secondary, but just more the illusion of it's being separated from the society. What I wanted is to show the logic. I wanted to get rid of logic of two stages. Like it's not that, because it presupposes that there is this separate individual first, and this individual is not social individual. So I kind of wanted to radicalize the idea of a social death drive, showing that it's not first there is individual that is constituted by their trauma, by the death drive operating upon the individual, being separated from sociality, and or that there is a sociality that is death driven, and then there's the process of individualization, for example, it's also death driven. Like what I wanted to do, and I did it. It's not I want to do in the future. To show that, to get rid of the logic of the two stages, because it implies this, that first, the initial, at least, trauma of death drive is not social. So what I would write is something like this, that the death drive is not double in terms of these two stages, when there is first a subject with the death drive constituted by death drive, and then there is a secondary traumatization, which is also work of death drive, and this is social death drive. It's rather that this death drive is both social and individual, and that it is the same drive, and that there is no subject that is not social subject. So this trauma is at the same time individual trauma and social trauma. It is double-sided. It's directed inwards and outwards at the same time. And it also, and this is what I would call the negative dialectics of that connects individual and society and disconnects individual and society at the same time, emphasizing more disconnection, of course, like the rupture between them, the rupture that constitutes both. And the very fabric of sociality and of individual, this implies that they're death-driven, and it's the same death drive, the same universal death drive. It's not the death drive of two stages. So one can represent this using this amazing scheme where both, it's not that something exists first, subject and society, first subject and then society, or this real stuff is subject and then comes society as a more illusionary secondary stuff. And it's not the other way around, that first there is society, actual thing, and subject, separate subject comes as secondary formation. It's rather from this logic, it's that both that are non-existent. It's the mutual, they constitute each other out of their mutual non-existence. It's like both subjects as positive presence of subject, as an entity positively present, and society as an entity positively present are illusions, and they exist only, we feel them as positively present only when the fantasy of existence of the opposite thing part of this pole, we reveal them as non-existent. So they constitute both illusions that support the illusion of existence of the other entity. So, and there is the lack that operates. They're based upon the lack and the rupture between them. Is the borderline between them that something spontaneously connects them, creates them, their mutual non-existence is what creates them, what makes them appear as existing. We can say that it is constituted around the lack without any possibility of this lack to be filled. And it can also be represented as subject existing around the lack, not only around the lack of absence of ourselves, but also, so the death drive is not only something within us, but also something that connects us through their absence within us and absence of the other. This absence of us is a connection with the other. So love or social bond will be, it's not only subject that is constituted around the absence of itself, but society or connectivity between us that is constituted around the absence of itself and of us. Because if its absence is nothing cannot belong to anyone, to anything that is separate from something. There is just different logic if you talk about nothingness or absence. So the lack within us is what reveals that we are as separate beings an illusion, but it also reveals the rupture between us as an illusion. And those two ruptures, those two illusionary formation, they constitute and support each other. So place where we actually meet not only ourselves, but also the other is a place of the absence of the connection that simultaneously constitutes this connection. we can say that Lacan's statement that sexual relationship doesn't exist, it also implies that can be extended that any relation, any type of relation or bond ultimately are non-existent. So they exist in a mode of non-existence. And once again, because we're constituted around this lack, and because the relationship are constituted around this lack, once we reveal the essence, how it's constituted, we coincide with our absence, so we vanish. And at the same time, this mode of self-destruction is connection with oneself and connection with the other. And we can call it the destructive nature of social bond, or destructive nature of love, which at the same time destroys. It exists in the modes of non-existence. It destroys itself, and it destroys us, but at the same time, what keeps us alive, what makes us present. So love would let us be at the same time, and at the same time destroys us or kills us. And we can feel this, the nature of our love as, so I'm trying to think of love as the other in love as absent one, and being in love meaning being susceptible, like feel the absence of the other as present in their absence. When we are in love, for example, we miss someone, meaning that we feel them as missing, even if they're there. Like we feel the rupture between us. Love is kind of impossibility of being with one, is being susceptible, being sensitive to the rupture. It's a very sad feeling. And being in love means becoming susceptible to the fact that the other is missing, to the paradoxical absence of love. And this is the emptiness that at the same time creates us as individual illusionary entities, at the same time connects us and disconnects us. All right, it was fast today. I'll stop recording and I hope we can discuss it.